Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Wellness Matters. For anyone that's joining us for the first time, Wellness Matters is a series brought to you by the Florida Center for Hormones and Wellness, where we bring in expert speakers in various aspects of wellness to talk on a certain topic. And today we are lucky to have with us our very own nurse practitioner, Joan Keel. If you're a patient of ours, you know Joan because she is one of our providers for our hormone patients, and she is magnificent. Everyone that sees her loves her, so we're really, really happy that you guys have tuned in for this one. Her topic is sugar is running your life, how hidden sugars could be killing you. So it's something that I'm personally very interested in. Obviously, if you're here, you must be interested in it as well, or you just really want to hear Joan talk some more. Valid reason for coming. So just a couple housekeeping rules. I have you muted right now just to make sure that Joan has the ability to speak without any noises interrupting her or anything like that. However, at the end, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll have a Q&A section so you can ask Joan any kind of questions you might have that come up during her presentation. And it's just a really good opportunity to speak with an expert on something that might be just like it is for me, bewildering for you. So next month, just a heads up, we have another Wellness Matters event on June 17th, which is going to be our first Wellness Matters event back in office since the beginning of last year, which is really exciting. So hopefully you join us for that. It's going to be with Dr. Carazelli and our Director of Medical Services, Patrick, presenting on peptides. It's called Cracking Open the World of Peptides. If you haven't seen throughout our office and visit with us, peptides are something we've become very much interested in here at the clinic. They have some really great properties to them, and they're really an emerging field in medicine. So if you're interested at all, I'm going to send out an email to everyone who's in here right now tomorrow, and we'll have a link so that you can register for that. So definitely join us for that one. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, which is Joan Keel. Joan is a nurse practitioner with us. She's been full-time with the clinic since January of this year. I think it's safe to say she has made a big splash amongst our patients. I can't say enough about how wonderful it's been to have her here. She's an incredibly intelligent person, and she is very passionate about what she's speaking on tonight. So you are in luck, truly. Right before we go, I just want to mention that we are recording this. If at any point you need to leave, that's totally fine. I'll go ahead and send you the recording of this presentation tomorrow. So all that said, I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to Joan. I'm going to run you real quick. Screen sharing works correctly. Everyone just sit back, relax, and soak up some knowledge. This is important stuff that she's talking about here. So let's get to it.
All right. See if I get this going. So how many clicks do I do?
I think you just hit the blue share button now.
Yeah, okay.
On the bottom right.
Oh, okay.
And then you're good.
All right, so then start here.
Yeah, just let me double check that everyone's seeing that.
Okay.
Bingo.
All right. So how do I go back? Hang on. You know, I'm not very technically challenged here. Okay. Are you ready?
So thank you all for taking time out of your day to be with us, because time is the one commodity that we can never get back. So that you would spend it with us here at Florida Center, it means a lot, and I appreciate it very much. This will be very low tech. I'm not a real high tech individual. However, one of the things that I run into in the practice every day, and have for 11 years as a nurse practitioner and 25 years in the nursing and healthcare business, is when you talk to folks about dietary intake, or how do they eat, or what's for breakfast, dinner, lunch, or snacks, everybody in general will tend to say, well, I eat really healthy. And I do believe that we all try to eat really healthy. But I will contend to you that the environment that we are in America, we are blessed to have an abundance of food, but we are not necessarily blessed to have an abundance of good nutritional food. Even the fresh fruits and vegetables in our stores have traveled for miles and miles, picked often early before maturity, getting good nutrient dense, good foods. It's harder to do than we think. But what I run into daily is when someone says they eat pretty healthy, I don't judge. I get it. I think I eat pretty healthy, but I know that I have room for improvement. So we get to talking about what's they're eating. And what I discover is that we're not aware of all the hidden carbs that we consume on a daily basis. They're hidden in things like our ketchup, or hidden in barbecue sauce, or hidden in the yogurt. We think we're getting a really good healthy yogurt when really there's only about 2 or 3 good yogurts out there that are lower in carb and high in protein. Certain breads we think are healthy. Now there are some keto breads out there now that are very low in carb if you can stand the taste, and most of them are better than they were before. You can still do some bread, but ultimately when you start breaking down a normal intake of what someone's consumed, it's amazing. They're shocked. And even something as simple for me, and I won't lie, one of my favorite snacks is McDonald's French fries, the large, please, because if I'm spending the money, 50 cents more and get you double. There are approximately 66 grams of carbohydrates in one large McDonald's French fries. In here, I'll show you how I came to a visual understanding, because I'm a very visual learner, taking a sugar cube analogy. And when we get to the sugar cube, I'll explain to you how many sugar cubes one large McDonald's French fry is worth. And it has stopped me from going, I haven't been there in quite a while. What this presentation is, it's not to judge. It's not to make anybody feel bad. It is not to discount or disapprove of what's in your fridge, what you purchase, what you enjoy. A lot of us are of the age where we grew up with the food pyramid, and the food pyramid taught us, and our parents taught us, 11 servings of breads and grains a day. The disappointing component of that is that that was funded by the wheat industry and forced or pushed out by the government. In the 50s and 60s and early 70s, we thought that was the way to do. Actually, what needs to happen is to inverse that pyramid, and we need 11 servings of fats and oils and only 1 to 2 servings of breads and grains. Completely counterintuitive to what we've been taught. When we eat with our eyes and we eat with our brain more than we do anything else. Hence the old expression, eyes are bigger than the stomach. So that said, let's move along here. So what this is just to shed some light on where we find some hidden sugars. And I will apologize up front. I wanted to have a bunch of visuals and stuff for you, but I just didn't get it together. I've got one good one, which is kind of intriguing, and then we can talk about others as we go along. Really what I want for you to take away from this is to just start being aware of the carbohydrates that are in the food that you eat. Some of them you have to Google to get the carbs. They'll never be 100% exact because size, weight, density, nutritional density will vary from grower, manufacturer, producer. But if you get a general idea and have a good understanding of carbohydrates and how many you're eating, you'll start to be able to cut those back. My favorite thing that I don't know if I made it up or if I found it somewhere, but I have said it, after you say it 3 times, you get to own it anyway. Fat never killed anybody, but sugar is killing everybody. And it's interesting that we are 30 years out from the onset of diabetic medications, and yet diabetes continues to grow by 30% per year. And the question has to be, why is that? And it's because of the nutritional components that we have. For the most part, type 2 diabetes is reversible. If we catch it early enough in the insulin resistant stage or in the stage of metabolic syndrome or syndrome X, we can stop it from happening. But if we get there, we can reverse it. But the first step is to understand what we're putting in our mouth, and that's carbohydrates. Nutritionally speaking, there are 3 components that we all know. You've got your proteins, which we know are the builders, our fats, which are our energy store and absorbing and making bioavailability for various things. And fats are very important for hormonal communication as well. And then the carbohydrates, and these are the primary functions of carbs. They're our energy. And we were taught you need a lot of energy to function and go about your day. When we consume a carbohydrate and it doesn't get used in the cell for energy, then that carbohydrate gets converted and stored as fat, or it gets converted and taken up by the liver. And then at night when we're sleeping, the liver dumps out the sugar it took out throughout the day to only cause us to spike more insulin. So this is why it's important for us to know the carbs you're putting in. no matter what form of carbohydrate we're consuming, be it broccoli, be it an apple, or be it your favorite potato chip snack, hot dog, chili, coleslaw, all carbohydrates are sugar. I can't say it enough. I've put it on the screen several times here. All carbohydrates are sugar. At one point or another, something we consume that's a carbohydrate will get broken down into its simplest form of sugar. And then at that time, the body has to decide what to do with it. And that's either take it up and use it for energy, or convert it and store it as fat, or taken up by the liver and dumped out at night. That stated the disclaimer to this, because this is not about separating out the differences in the type of carbohydrates. This is just to get us understanding carbohydrates and looking at the number that we're eating. Not all carbohydrates are created equal. They don't all process the same. And that is a topic for another day, which is something we'd be glad to do if it's something that's of interest to you all. Because, for example, JFG peanut butter, or not JFG, that's a local brand, Jif, Skippy, what are the Peter Pan, peanut butter, 50% of the calories in a serving of that peanut butter is sugar. When you look at the ingredients of that particular peanut butter, it says peanuts and sugar and a few other things for preservatives. When you get a natural peanut butter, all natural, ground from peanuts, and it's that peanut and oil, and you got to mix it up, the carbohydrate count is almost the same. So you think to yourself, well, I don't like the natural peanut butter because it doesn't taste as good because there's nothing in it but peanuts and the oil that comes from the peanuts. But the Jif, the Skippy, the Peter Pan tastes so good because 50% of it is sugar. Sugar is addictive. I'd have to actually get the data on it, but my experience has been that sugar is the third most addictive consumed product that we can have. Heroin being number one, nicotine from tobacco number two, and sugar number three. The problem with number three, sugar, is that we have to eat to live. So we can't just not eat and not get sugar. So this is where we have to do our due diligence. And this is where we have to understand that what we're being sold, if you will, on a daily basis is not necessarily what's good for us. I can remember when Tang first came out. I was a kid in the 60s. I was born in 63, telling my age here. And Tang was one of the first processed foods that came out. Now, keeping in mind, all foods are processed, but then there's the refined, overly processed foods, such as your boxed foods, your fast foods, our breads, and a lot of our grains today. But that said, Tang was one of the first convenience foods on the market. And from there, it's just been downhill ever since. And the increase of sugar in our dietary intake has expounded since then. Now, it's just like Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name is still a rose. Well, in this world of nutrition and health and well-being, sugar by any other name is still sugar. So it's frustrating. It's what the market does to confuse us so that we'll buy their product. But you want to be aware of the different names that sugar comes under, because sugar is still sugar, is still sugar, is still sugar. Now, granted, the impact is different from each and every one, but ultimately all of these sugars that you see listed here create problems and issues. And if we can't use the sugar for energy, then it gets stored as fat. Carbohydrates, I like to say, come in two flavors. You got your simple and your complex. Again, not all carbs are created equal, and that's a topic for another day. But I think we've all heard this for the most part. And it's kind of a kitschy saying, but if it's white, it's wrong, with the exception of cauliflower, cream cheese, sour cream, white cheddar cheese. But anything else that's white and pasty, it's not good for us. If it's a corn-based chip or a corn-based product, it's generally not good for us either. Here's some breakdown from the CDC of the different components of how sugar gets added into the things that we purchase and we eat. A lot of us wind up drinking a lot of our carbohydrates and not even realizing it. In my opinion, giving children fruit juice or fruit drinks is the same equivalent. You might as well mix them up some sugar water and give it to them, because ultimately that's what they're getting is just pure sugar. I often hear that, well, I do agave, and agave is less of an impact on insulin in the system. Well, no, it isn't. It's exactly the same. Agave is still sugar. Honey is still sugar. Flour converts into sugar. So these are things to be aware of in terms of your food. So when you're going through the grocery store, take the time to pick up and read the labels. You'll spend a little time initially. Your time spent on the front end will pay you dividends on the back end. There is no recommended daily nutritional requirement for sugar. So how much is too much? That's a good question. But what I see from day to day and what Dr. Carazella deals with from day to day and what most of us in healthcare see is that we are all, I won't say victims because I don't like that word, but we are all been exposed to, through no fault of our own, big conglomerates such as Kellogg and people who produce big food, ConAgra. And their objective isn't your health and well-being. And they may put some good altruistic things out there, but ultimately their goal is to make money. And if you follow the money trail, you start to see the deterioration of nutrition. So this gets into the sugar cube analogy, because again, I'm a very visual learner. I actually bought a bunch of sugar cubes. I was going to put them out there for you, but again, time did not allow. Sugar cubes are great. As a kid, we used to love to eat them. I don't know about you, but I did anyway. So if you think about sugar cube, one sugar cube is about 4.5 grams of carbs. Some boxes say 2 cubes is 7, so that'd be 3.25 or whatever. But I'm bad at math, so I just simple it down to 4 grams to give us a little leeway, but it's easier to calculate the division at 4. So the main thing with carbohydrates when you want to know what you're consuming is to understand what net carbs are. And that's a big buzzword and things that we've heard in the last few years when we talk about nutrition is net carbs. So how you figure net carbs is you take your total grams of carbs on the back of a package, or Googled off of the internet if it's an apple or a banana or whatever. You subtract the number of grams of fiber, and that gives you net carbs. From that point, then you take your net carbs and you divide it by 4. And that gives you the total number of cubes of sugar that a food is worth. So back to my favorite snack, which I have not had in quite some time, is McDonald's French fries. Large McDonald's French fries is 66 grams of sugar per red container. Divided by 4, it's 16 3/4 cubes of sugar. Now, I don't know about you, but I could not sit down and eat 16 3/4 cubes of sugar. I probably couldn't get past the first 1 or 2 at this point. Something to ask yourself, would you sit down and eat 16 3/4 cubes of sugar as a side dish to the burger that you're eating, which we haven't begun to calculate the bun sugar from the bun, and then 1 packet or 1 tablespoon of ketchup is worth 1 sugar cube. I don't know about y'all, but I just can't use 1 packet of ketchup for my French fries. It's usually several, browning my French fries in ketchup. So the 16 3/4 cubes of sugar expands exponentially. And this is a lot of why we don't feel good after we eat. We get tired and sluggish because we get a big spike of insulin to meet all that sugar. And then we crash. And then we wonder why we're so tired, exhausted, and fatigued. Sugar causes the body to become inflamed inside the vascular system, leads to heart disease and heart attacks and stroke in our joints, in our tissues. It helps to contribute to bloating, brain fog, irritability, poor sleep, poor bathroom habits, if you will. It's just not a good thing. So I don't know about you, but this was a big thing for me. The way sugar metabolizes, according to Dr. Hugh from Harvard, is the same way as alcohol. It converts and gets stored as fat. Too much sugar consumption can lead to a fatty liver. One of the ways we know we've got somebody with a fatty liver is we have elevated liver enzymes on labs. There are multiple reasons why liver enzymes would be elevated, but the first and usually the most accurate is non-alcoholic fatty liver, secondary to a diet that's been rich in sugar. That leads to heart disease. When we eat a lot of sugar, you can see here, these are the things that your body can suffer from. What I love here is this one here. You get hooked because, again, sugar is about the 3rd most addictive product out there. Again, we don't have to shoot heroin to get by from day to day. We don't have to smoke tobacco to get by from day to day, but we all have to eat. We've been eating since the minute we were born, if you will. So these are things to keep in mind. And so when you're feeling a little groggy or a little slow, or you just feel like you can't get out of your own way one day, it's probably a combination of hormones, but hormones are impacted by too much sugar as well. I was going to have a whole bunch of these, and I apologize I didn't get them together, but Cheerios is one of those things, and they advertise themselves as heart healthy, and they advertise themselves with a lot of fiber, and they do have a lot of fiber. So this is a breakdown of carbs minus fiber gives us our net carbs of 10 for a serving. What's important to also understand when we're looking at carbohydrates on the back of a package, or when we're looking at the carbohydrates when we Google something on the internet, is what is a serving. For example, a serving of a banana is half. Well, I don't know about y'all, but eating half is not something that I do. If I have a banana, I was taught to clean my plate, I eat the whole banana. So I'm getting 2 servings of that particular fruit when I do that. So that means I'm getting double the sugar, but I'm also getting double the other nutrition that comes with it. So a serving of Cheerios, for example, is 1 cup. Have you ever poured out 1 cup of cereal and looked at it? It's enough to make you mad. It's not enough to make you feel good. It's like, okay, well, that's enough to just make you angry. So let's put in a little bit more and a little bit more. Then most of us will put milk. Now, we don't necessarily put in 8 ounces of milk, but the fun thing about milk, and I got a little typo in here, I apologize, but 1 8-ounce glass of whole milk or 2% has 12 grams of sugar. Who knew, right? It's good for us. Vitamin D, it's nutritious. Not really, not so much. Plus the proteins also cause inflammation, and a lot of people who have lactose intolerance suffer even more so. But you take the net carbs of your Cheerios, and then you take the net carbs of your sugar, and you're back up to 22 grams of carbohydrates, and you divide that by 4, and that's a breakfast of 5.5 cubes of sugar. Now, I don't know about you, but in my house growing up as a kid, we put sugar on our Cheerios because they didn't taste good unless they were sweeter, right? So now we've got sugar, dump some sugar on it, pour some milk, which is more sugar on it, usually have it with a piece of toast or 2, right? And there's approximately anywhere from 12 to 23 grams of sugar in 1 slice of bread, AKA toast. So now we've got that much more sugar. Another good analogy is peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Who out there likes PB&J? I know I have always loved it. And I love it with potato chips on it, which is kind of bizarre, I suppose. But bread is sugar with the most commercial peanut butter, which is sugar, with jelly or jam, which is sugar. And then we add a glass of milk to it. And we've been taught that that's a nutritious, wholesome meal. But really, it's just one big vat of sugar. By the time you get through with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you've got somewhere in the ballpark of about 25 to 30 cubes of sugar. That's a lot of sugar for a day. So these are things that we're also doing to our kids and our grandkids when we think about what we're feeding them. Now, does that mean we're never going to have it again? Yeah, we're all going to. It's called life. And how do we balance that out? But one of the things that we need to do is just be conscious and be aware and substitute. And like I said, not all carbs are created equal. And again, we can do that later, another point. So that's really kind of all I have, because really that's the gist of the basis of it. So if you have any questions, or if you want to run through some other foods, I can pull them up and we can talk about them. Something that I like doing when I see my patients is going through and showing them, okay, this is how many carbs. I get a lot of folks who like to go to the gym. They talk about their pre-workout meal. I get a little tickled because when you take in carbohydrates to give you some energy to go work out, and then you go up to work out at the gym, what you're generally doing is just burning off the sugar you just consumed. You're not really breaking down and getting the fat to convert into energy to get the fat off. So that's something that a lot of them don't think about. Now, if you're already a 2% body fat and you're doing it, you're probably okay. But the rest of it's not so much. So it's something to be aware of. So that's kind of all I have. And I apologize, it's not a little longer, but hopefully you get the gist and know that sugar's killing us all and we need to consume much less of it. I appreciate it. Anything you got to say, I'm here for you. Thank you.
You know, I can tell you that because now that I'm being more mindful of what I'm eating, I do a lot of soups that are homemade because I just don't like the can anymore now that I've done that. And what's very surprising to me is because I'm looking at the labels, like I couldn't find any broth that had no freaking sugar. I was like, what the heck is going on? You know, and now I make my own broth too, but I have something that's lower in sugar in a pinch, but it was really kind of eye-opening to me, just looking at the things that are very simple that you think, why would that have sugar in it? So yeah, it's really kind of disappointing the more you look, because you're like, what are they trying to do to us? You know, it is so addictive.
Anybody else that has any comments or questions, you can unmute yourself. I've given everybody the ability to do so. Or if you don't feel like saying anything, there we go. Someone put something in the chat. So we do have a chat box. If you saw it, Karen just asked a question. So Karen asks, what about natural sweeteners like monk fruit?
Still sugar, still metabolizes the same. May take a little longer than other, but it's still sugar. It's not as processed, but it's still sugar.
And does stevia fall under that same line then?
It doesn't fall under the same line in terms of how it metabolizes into sugar and gets stored as fat, but what the substitute sugars do is they still stimulate the some insulin. And when we dump insulin, insulin has to meet up with sugar. Well, there's no sugar because we've used a stevia or we've used a sweet and low or a Splenda or that kind of thing. So then we have this insulin. We've not increased our caloric intake per se, but we have spikes in insulin that causes cravings. So that's why, like, again, Diet Coke, they're addictive for a reason, guilty, know it well. So as Dr. Fung would say, who wrote the obesity code and the diabetes code, if you have to use something, stevia is your best option. And then eventually work your way out that if at all possible. So.
I have a question. I have switched to honey, thinking that it wasn't as bad as the whole sugar.
Right.
Now, because each morning I drink a cup of coffee.
Right.
And I usually put 1 teaspoon of honey.
Okay.
I have since stopped eating a toast because for some unknown reason, I just can't take it anymore. But from a practical point of view, is what would having a cup of coffee, I cannot drink the coffee without some flavor.
I'm with you.
So what would you recommend? Perhaps I should go to have the stevia and get off the honey. What would you recommend?
So just so you know, 1 serving of honey is 1 tablespoon. And that's what I hear you sharing in your coffee. And 1 tablespoon is equivalent to 17 grams of carbohydrates or sugar. So
Actually, I said 1 teaspoon.
Oh, 1 teaspoon. Okay, so if we cut that down by 4, so 17. So you're getting about 1/4 cube of sugar. So pick your poison, live your life, find a balance. If that's what you enjoy and that's what you do and you're cutting carbs out in other places, it's perfectly okay. To go completely carb free is nearly impossible unless you're just truly dedicated and a fanatic.
Kind of hard for me because I grew up eating more starch than vegetables. So I'm trying to eat more vegetable now. But I noticed that you said something about vegetables like broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said broccoli has a high carbohydrate, which is sugar. So are there vegetables that we could avoid eating if they are high in carbohydrates?
So that's where we get into, and that's something that I would like to do down the road, is talk about glycemic load or glycemic index versus glycemic load. Foods that have carbohydrates have impact on the body in terms of how quickly it converts into sugar. And then therefore how much insulin is getting spiked at the time that we consume that food. So for example, if you eat broccoli, it's an entire head of broccoli, a medium-sized head, is 29 grams for the entire head. But it's a slow process into sugar. It's also full of fiber, so we'd have to count the fiber off that 29, which brings that down quite a bit. So vegetables are not bad, it's just vegetables in moderation. And then it's what most of us don't do is put in enough fat when we're switching over from the starches to the vegetables and some meats. We don't put enough fat. Now, there are people who don't do dairy. There are some people who shouldn't do dairy. Hashimoto's, for example, doesn't do well with a lot of dairy. Dairy can create some inflammation. But if you're not lactose intolerant, if you don't have Hashimoto's, cover your broccoli in some butter and enjoy. Because nobody I know will sit down and eat a whole head. You're going to eat a serving for the most part. And a serving is about 1 cup to 1.5 cups. And at 29 divided by 4, basically, and take away the fiber, you're probably only getting about 7 or 8 grams of carbs for that broccoli. That's not bad. And it's a slow burn into sugar. The bread with dinner, let's say you're out to dinner and you have a nice piece of fish and you have some broccoli and then they serve some good garlic rolls. Skip the garlic roll, enjoy the broccoli, enjoy your fish, have a salad. Those are okay because they don't spike the insulin nearly as much as the simple sugars do. So it's about finding that balance, but we all need to add a little more fat into our diet because fat is satiety. Fat makes us feel full. You cannot eat too much fat. When you think about it, when you go to a party and there's that big charcuterie board or a big smorgasbord laid out, and on one end are your olives and your antipastas and your cheeses and things like that, or nuts, and you go to put one more bite in your mouth, you kind of go, oh, you kind of throw up because you're done. But down here is the cake and the chips and the bonbons and the whatever. And there's always room for one more of those as we're headed out the door, even though we're stuffed. It's a glitch in our system that I cannot explain, but the body will not let you eat too much fat, but it's easy to eat too much sugar because sugar is addictive. And we've done a lot of stuff on insulin. So my goal is not really to talk about insulin, but we just have to understand that when we put in a sugar, we have to spike an insulin molecule. Every sugar molecule has to match with an insulin molecule. Insulin is the transporter of which sugar goes through to go into the cell for energy. But when the cells are full, they shut down the receptor site for insulin, and then insulin and sugar are just floating through the bloodstream, and insulin eventually goes, man, you got to go somewhere. You can't stay here. Sugar breaks off, gets converted and stored as fat, or converted and taken up by the liver to be dumped later that night. But this insulin molecule is still floating around, but it's rendered useless because its tip is broken, if you will. So then it causes us to crave though, because insulin wants sugar. So we put in more sugar, we dump more insulin. Next thing we know, we've got a whole bloodstream full of insulin, and it just insulin begets insulin because sugar begets it. So the way we put the fire out is we stop putting in the gasoline in this case, and that's the sugar. Fat is very satisfying. You may not like sour cream, but I have found through my life that if I'm craving, if I go and get a scoop of sour cream, it kills all cravings. I'm satisfied, I'm good, I can walk away from the fridge. I don't stand there hanging and thinking, what am I going to eat next? And it takes time to make those modifications. Fiber is important, and we get some fiber through our vegetables, but most of us should do a fiber supplement because fiber increases satiety also. Fiber fills us up and makes us feel full. Fiber decreases our risk of colon cancer. Fiber decreases insulin resistance. Fiber helps to decrease our lipids, especially when we get a methyl cellulose fiber, such as a cetracell or something that we have here in the office from Zymogen, which is a methyl cellulose. It scrapes through the bloodstream and helps to do good things for us. So a little more fiber, make sure we're drinking plenty of water, more fat. If we want to look at calories, and I'm not a calorie counter, I never have been, and everybody's got to find their thing that works for them. But what I have found that's worked in teaching patients is don't worry about your calories, count your carbs. If you keep your carbs to a minimum, the calories will take care of themselves. Because when you take your carbs down to 25 or 30 a day, really 20 if you really want to get serious about moving things off the bones, your calories will naturally reduce. So don't worry about counting calories. Just look at your carbs, figure out how many you can have for a day. And when you've reached your max, find things that are not loaded with carbohydrates. Celery is kind of a free food. A lot of the salads are free food. There's very few carbs. Dill pickles. Who knew? Dill pickles, no carbs, no calories. The dill juice from the pickle, no carbs, no calories. Sauerkraut. Now, not everybody likes this kind of fermented food, but it's really very good, especially if you're cutting back on carbohydrates, because it fills you up and it creates satiety. When we're satisfied, we don't then continue to crave. And it takes about 2 weeks to truly detox, to get the sugar that's floating in our bloodstream and the insulin that's floating, to start that to break down and get back to more normal levels. It's a 2 to 3 week process. It's not fun. You feel bad, headache, bloating, miserable. Maybe you overpoop or you don't poop enough. You're irritable. But if you can get through those first 2 weeks or so of detoxing off of a ton of sugar, you'll come out on the other side and you will feel more energy than you ever imagined. And whatever else you're doing to improve your health and well-being is exponentially better, because any one thing by itself can only do so much. It's what else is going on with it that gets us the full benefit. Does that make sense? So enjoy your honey, but cut your carbs out somewhere else.
Okay. I hope I'm not manipulating the session, but you mentioned fat.
Mm-hmm.
I once was a bacon eater. I would never make eggs without bacon.
Right.
But I've sort of dropped the bacon as I thought it was too fatty. Are you saying that you can have as much fat as you want? So can I go back to my bacon?
You can, but again, look at the quality of the bacon that you get. Bacon's almost more expensive than steak. You're almost better to do a steak and egg than a bacon and egg. I love bacon also, but you have to watch your bacon for the nitrates. But if you enjoy 2 or 3 pieces of bacon with your eggs every day, that's
It's
fine.
very fatty.
It's okay.
Okay.
Because
All right.
how many pieces of bacon do you eat before you're done? 2, 3, right?
Okay. All right.
A whole pound? I can't. So enjoy and eat till you're satisfied, because when you eat till you're satisfied and you're eating a fat, protein, low carb approach, your satiety increases. And when you're satisfied, when you feel good and full, your portions naturally cut back, your desire cuts back, your cravings cut back. And it doesn't happen on the first trip out. It's a journey. It's a process. It takes, again, 2 to 3 weeks to detox. It takes about a month to really see these changes in terms of you're not craving anymore, your feet don't hit the floor and you want some carby, sweetie thing, you can walk away when somebody offers you a cookie. It's phenomenal when it happens, but we have to reset the thermostat, if you will, clean out the gunk in the engine, and then get those pistons perking again so we can run our 6-cylinder on 6 cylinders and not 3.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. Enjoy your honey though. That's not much, what little bit you're doing. So pick your
Okay,
battles.
thank you.
Absolutely.
I want to chime in. Deborah, earlier in the green right there, she said something, but I think your speakers may have been off. She
Okay.
mentioned that she has trouble finding like pre-made broths that
Right,
don't
with no
have
sugar.
Yeah. So she was saying that she's been making homemade broths.
Which is perfect.
Mhm.
Because when you do your own, you're in control and you're not at the whim of having to make it be preserved and travel and be on shelves and all those kinds of things. So the more you do, Deborah, of your own, the better off you are. And if you get a nice cohort in your neighborhood, you can start selling some of that off, make a little money. And why not? That's how Famous Amos Cookies got started.
Yeah, like, just even like, it's so silly. Like even just like the Publix, just regular chicken, rotisserie chicken. Okay, my dogs are spoiled. I'm just going to tell you. I cook for them, but sometimes I don't. So I get the chicken.
What we do the same.
And then the carcass of it, all the bones, that's what I use to put in my crock pot. And I let it run to make my broth. Because I'm like, I'm not going to waste anything,
Well, and that's as it should be. And what a wonderful upcycle, if you will, because normally people throw it in the trash and then it doesn't get its second use. So that's fantastic. And then that broth is good just for sipping. If you read Dr. Jason Fung's book on intermittent fasting, when you're intermittent fasting, that doesn't mean you don't eat something. You can do sauerkraut, you can do broth, you can do pickles. He's got a cadre of things that we can still consume in the process of working through some intermittent fasting, which is fantastic. And it's amazing how the broth, the dill pickle, even the dill pickle juice keeps you from feeling hungry. It's amazing. It's really amazing. So kudos to you and great job. And next time you do some, can me some, I'll buy it from you.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is because since I've been cutting back on sugar, like I'll do 85%. I liked dark chocolate, right? Like I used to eat the Dove dark chocolate, little squares, they have a little message. You're like,
Yeah,
so
happy, yeah.
And it's, but then I bought the 85% because now I'm like, so it's really interesting because now I've been doing this for a while, for like a couple months at least now.
By the way.
Yeah. Pardon? Oh, yay. Thank you. Yeah. Because I've everybody, I lost like 13 pounds now. So
that is almost 3 5-pound bags of flour.
Yeah, and it feels so great because I can see it like with my clothes. But what I wanted to say was that like now that I've been doing the 85%, like I tried a chocolate from somebody like here, I was like, oh, let me try, or even like we had a party at work for somebody leaving and they're like, okay. So I was like, well, I'm gonna have a little bite, like literally I took a bite and I didn't even like it. I threw it out because I was like, this is way too sweet now. I can't even enjoy that. So I'm like, so I'm not tempted anymore, like you said.
And it's amazing.
It's just like, it was kind of disgusting to be honest with you. And it wasn't even that sweet according to what I used to think, but now that I've been doing this, so now I feel like I could just easily say, yeah, no, go ahead, you enjoy for me.
I'm good. Yeah, exactly. And they don't have to know why. Another business.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. But it's cool. And anything that's 70% cocoa or higher, perfectly eat and enjoy. Because you can't eat too much of that either. It has a point of saturation where you're like, okay, I'm good. So perfect.
Hey, Deborah, I don't know if you saw, but Leah, our patient liaison, is in right now. And she said in the chat, yep, you look amazing, Deborah. Congrats on all your progress.
Very good. Absolutely.
So it's exciting. So next time I come in the office, I'll be even tinier. So that's good.
And who knew? You didn't think you could do this. And look at you now. You're on.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm proud for you because it's not easy. And it's it's a marathon. No doubt. But very good. Very good.
So thank you, Leah. Appreciate you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Joan before we call it an evening? If you do, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone, or you can put it in the chat. Just want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask any questions you might have.
No, but I'm upset and I can't have my Hershey Kisses.
Well, let me help you with that just a smidge. If you put them in the freezer and you have about 9, you're not blowing your carb or your sugar load too much, and that's the first step into launching into the next level of dark chocolate, and then work your way up to cocoa. It's hard to eat 70% or higher cocoa if you're used to sugar because it's bitter. It's dark, bitter chocolate. But if you'll keep your kisses to 9 at a time, keep it to 9 a day, but a serving of 9, and then work your way slowly, mix, maybe 5 with a little darker chocolate, a little more bitter chocolate, and eventually you'll get that mix of ratio.
Yeah, I have that in the refrigerator too, but those kisses just call my name.
They do. Sugar. I didn't get it up here. I have this wonderful thing that I found, and it's called glitter sugar, a way to make your sugar look like glitter. I love glitter, and who doesn't love sugar, right? I'm like, oh my God, this is not good, because it's beautiful and it's sparkly and it's fun and it calls your name. Come to me, enjoy me, because it is the devil incarnate, to say the least. So I get you. And are any of us perfect every day? Oh, heck no.
No.
But are we better more days than we're not? That's the question, and that's the goal,
Well, you mentioned something about hormones, and I swear, ever since I started menopause, I never ate sweets like I want them now.
Right.
And it's really, it's hard, and it's not because I can control it, but it's just like, I don't want to control it right now, but I need to. I lost like 13 pounds, but I put 5 back on. Okay. So now I'm going back, onto my regular eating, though we were on vacation. So I have to give some of that probably because of that.
That's called life. And that's how we find the balance.
Yeah.
Aware makes it easier to get back on track when you come off a vacation or come back. And to that point, why is it that you think sugar craving goes up when we hit perimenopause, menopause? Drum roll. Because insulin starts to rise naturally. Even if we're eating beautifully healthfully, and we're that, I call it, overly dedicated individual who's just, hardcore, they'll still come in and have a thickening around the middle. They'll still come in and be tired, lethargic, and fatigued, and they don't understand why, because nothing has changed in their routine.
Right.
But they're craving more and they're putting on weight. Why? Because insulin rises, inflammation increases as we lose our hormones. So to that note, sidebar, something to think about. Why is heart disease the #1 killer of men and women in their 6th, 7th, and 8th decade? Is it truly genetic? I was taught that if your age, your gender, your genetics, your family history, 3 things you have no control over, were primary contributing factors to cardiac disease, right? Yep. And dietary and exercise were the other 2. We can control those. So as I get more and more into hormones, and have been doing them now for 11 years and have been in healthcare for 25, I step back and I look at my own family history, and I look at my dad and my grandfather. Did their heart disease really come from any genetic component, or was it a loss of testosterone and estradiol, because men lose testosterone and then estradiol falls also?
Interesting.
Which causes a cascade of increased insulin, inflammation, loss of bone, cognitive decline, more sedentary lifestyle, which all rolls into age-related diseases. I wonder. So it's not scientific. I can't give you the p-value and all that kind of stuff. Dr. Carazella could probably give you the data verbatim. He's very good at that. But ultimately, when I stop and think about, yes, there are genetic components. Yes, there are people who are at risk due to genetics. But for the bulk of us in the bell-shaped curve of the center, which is a good 60 to 80%, it's not genetics. It might be partially lifestyle in terms of exercise and diet, but it's a whole lot of loss of metabolic function. And when you correct that, things improve. And when I see cholesterol panels, one of the reasons why we look at lipids when we look at hormones is because testosterone and estradiol in men and testosterone, estradiol, and progesterone in women counter cholesterol. And when I can take and see someone's cholesterol panel that's not grand when they show up, and in as little as 6 weeks or as long as 3 months, and see those numbers start to decline just by balancing out the hormones, it makes you stop and think, have I been taught wrong? Is something not quite right with this picture? Is it really truly genetic? You can't control your age, I'll grant you. You can't control your genetics, okay, fine. You can't control your gender, all right? Men are at higher risk than women, but not anymore.
Right.
But is this genetic component truly genetic? Or is it that our parents and our grandparents didn't have access to hormones to keep them balanced? I'm voting that it's predominantly a loss of metabolic function, because in 11 years, that's what it's bared out to show me.
Interesting. Well, I realize now when you were talking how much sugar is in everything that I would never, it's like, okay, I know there's sugar in there, but with your sugar cube demonstration, I'm like, oh, wow.
It's a huge visual, isn't it? It's like, whoa, that's a bunch of sugar.
I like big McDonald's French fries too, with lots of ketchup, and it's like, this is okay. I'll eat this, and then tonight maybe I'll have a salad and a piece of meat. I'll balance it out.
But it's really, yes, it's a balancing out, but no, it's really not, because the damage from sugar. For women, we worry about our skin, right? We get a little crepey, we get a little saggy. Well, sugar deteriorates skin in a great big heartbeat as well. Breaks down collagen, causes increase in wrinkles, contributes to the hormonal slide, and we get some acne that maybe didn't have before. The ongoing impact is just profound and huge, and we don't even begin to understand because we weren't taught that way.
Right. What was that book about intermittent fasting you said?
Yes, I'll go get it and I'll show you. It's called The Obesity Code, and it's by Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. And he is a nephrologist who trained out in California at UCLA. He's currently practicing in Canada, and he's a nephrologist by training. And what he asked was the question of, why is it this many years later, with all the new medications on the market and all the education we have about diabetes, does diabetes continue to rise at 30% per year? Instead of declining, it's inclining. It's going up and up and up. Why is that? So he went back, and the book is predominantly the data that supports his hypothesis and conclusion. And that is, we've increased our refined processed foods, quick, easy access. Carbohydrates are cheap.
Right.
They're easy to get, they're easy to grab. They're comfort food. The size of our plates have grown. When we were growing up in the 60s, the size of a dinner plate was 7 inches. Then it went to 11 inches, and then it went to 15, and now we are up to 17-inch dinner plates. Well, we eat with this, and if that plate's not full, we feel like we're starving.
Yeah.
It's not full. So it's a horrible trick played on us, truly, by the food industry. And I'm not bashing, but the largest lobby that's the most silent and stealthy is the food industry. They spend upwards to billions with a B to find that perfect crunch, that perfect texture, that perfect mix of chemicals to give this flavor so that we become addicted. And then when these things get served at holiday or family functions or joyous events, they become emotional. And we eat with our brain, and we eat with our eyes, and we eat with our emotions more than anything else. If we truly let our stomach and our hunger drive our consumption, we probably wouldn't eat that much to begin with. But there's not one social occasion. This country is so based on social interaction around food. And what's the easiest thing to serve the masses? Bread, if you will, and all derivatives thereof, casseroles, things like that. Cheap, quick, easy fill and fulling, right? It's that eventually we create this addiction. And it's terrible. When I see parents giving kids soda, as a pacifier, I cringe, because that's a kid who we're going to be dealing with down the road, because they've already started the onslaught of the damage of all that sugar.
Right. The one thing, Europe, they eat so differently. I mean, when we went there, the portions, they're just so much smaller, and it's really pretty healthy food. Their markets out there are gorgeous. I mean, some of the vegetables and fruit are like unbelievable.
Like paintings.
So it's just a difference how you get served a plate there, and then you come here and you get this big thing, and I'm like, I never eat that. And you take it home and live off it for 3 days. But
exactly. Yeah. And it's 3 days of eating out of the garbage can, if you will, because what we got to begin with probably wasn't good for us to begin with. So absolutely.
Do you guys know anybody that could help you start dieting and learn, or to help diet and learn how to put these foods together?
As a matter of fact, that was something we talked about at our meeting. We meet quite a bit here in the office about what we can do to make your experience better and how many touch points will improve your outcomes. And Patrick is actually working with a lady who is a nutritionist, who we'll never say the words moderation is the key, because she'll tell you there is no such thing as moderation with a lot of this stuff. You don't want any of it. But she's hormone friendly, which is good. She gets the whole concept. And she works very hard to work with the patient within the confines of what's available to help teach and educate them on how to change their eating lifestyle. We're all victims of being raised with the food pyramid, 11 servings,
Right.
red servings, So she does help unravel those things that we were all taught wrong. When I think back to my start in nursing 25 years ago, and I went through nutrition class, and then the things that I would say to patients and the way I would teach, I've called a few that I know, and I've apologized because it wasn't good data. It wasn't good information. I knew in my gut, but I wasn't smart enough to go, hey, something's up. Let me go. You know, I'm not that I'm a cusp between a nerd and not a nerd, you know, kind of like it, kind of, but I'm horrible at math and science. So I never, you know, I just kind of went, whatever. But as I've gotten more educated, more experienced, I realized I've done some disservice in my day. And I can't tell you how devastating that is to think you led someone down a wrong path when you thought you were helping them. So.
Right. Yeah, but at least you didn't do that on purpose. So, you know,
Yeah.
bad like that.
Yeah, there are two ways to do harm in medicine, because one is to do no harm, and the other is to withhold service and not give service to give harm. And we see a lot more of that these days than the other, and it's really sad and it's awful. And part of it is, if I hear one more physician or one more provider say, go home, eat less, exercise more, because yes, it's important, but most of the time it's metabolic. It's 25% dietary and 75% metabolic when we get to a certain age. And you can do this part right, and you'll get about that far, and then you can't get anywhere else, and then you give up because you're stuck. And then people look at you like it's your fault. Dr. Fung does a very nice job of explaining it's not your fault. And it's one of the things I like. But then the rest is metabolic. So you get your metabolic functions balanced out, your thyroid, the insulin. Insulin is a major hormone. It's our fat hormone. It's a transporter hormone necessary for energy, unless it's in excess. All that to say, yeah, we got to undo the damage that we've been doing. So.
And learn to read labels. I think that's the hard part. We have to learn the key words to look for.
Right. And you saw that list of the different names for sugar. And, one of the biggest arguments I had with a high school friend was he's diabetic. He says, but I do agave. And I'm like, well, then you might as well just go ahead and go die today, because that's where you're headed. And sure enough, he's not doing very well 10 years later because you wouldn't listen. You know, you can't preach at home. Jesus left Nazareth, right? So the people you grew up with. But.
And I heard, like, today I was talking to another provider, and how the dialysis numbers are going up for the age was going down. So you've got more dialysis patients at a younger age even. So that's really scary.
It is very scary. And I don't know why we've gone after big pharma, and they're not without their sin. We go after other people, but no one's ever gone after big food. No one. And the number one contributor to the decline of healthcare or health in America is big food. The conglomerates they're guilty. And yet they, again, as I said earlier, they're stealthy. They have the biggest lobby, and they're dangerous. They're very dangerous. So, but they have billions to addict us to their product, because it's all about the feel good in the quick moment. And, oh, don't worry about it. We'll bring it to you. Let's deliver your death.
Yeah, right.
And whatever. So
let's well, I'll be getting some natural peanut butter too.
Yeah, it takes a bit. I went through about 5 jars before I finally could learn to eat the whole thing. But once you get there, it's good.
Do they have jelly, sugarless, or a jelly that could be?
No. No.
So you could steal a little bit of a drop to put on.
You know, you pick your battles and you find your balance.
Yep.
And like with Carmen there with the honey in her coffee, if that's how she enjoys her coffee, if that is one of the ways she starts her day and it gives her pleasure and brings her joy, and that's minute amount, enjoy, go for it, because you can't cut everything out.
I was going to say, you're right. You can't cut everything out. So you just sort of have it in, everybody says, have it in moderation, but you know, you got to even watch that. It's not even.
It's not even good when it comes to sugar, but pick your poison, pick your battles. And I always say, pick one thing to start with. For some people, it's just getting your water intake up. If you can get your water up to at least 64 ounces a day, that's worth 10 pounds of weight by itself.
Yeah. I drink down every day, and it's like, it starts at 7 a.m. and then by 9 a.m. it says 7 o'clock a.m. Good morning. 9, hydrate yourself. Remember your goal. All the way down. I finish by about 7.
That's beautiful.
I do that every day.
That's beautiful. That's fantastic.
You know, this is how I had to do it though. I had to carry something like this week so I could see it, and I needed to be able to visualize it and what I drank.
Yeah. And that's incredible. And it takes a bit to get that habit going.
Yeah. And once you get past a day or two, then you won't pee all day
Thank
or
you.
every 15 minutes.
Exactly.
I mean, because that's the worst part of it. Starting like this, but then by the
Deborah's got hers, yeah.
Yeah, it's got the time on there too.
yeah, and then when you're used to it, you don't run all the time.
Right, and then you find that you miss it when you don't get your water in.
Yeah, it's like, where's my water? So yeah, so that's one thing I have started in the last month or two.
Beautiful. And
I'm
that's-
doing good there. I just got to shed a couple pounds.
Hey, and it's a process, it's a journey, absolutely, a marathon, as I like to say.
Yeah, it is.
On out, John and Lynn, but y'all been awful quiet over there. Any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to share? Or just taking in all this? Gotcha. Okay, very good.
All right. Well, it seems like that's all the questions that we're going to have. It's 7, so I think it's about time to wrap it up. I told you guys that Joan's passionate about this, didn't I? That was
Yes.
so powerful. I just want to remind you once again before we go that it's June 17th. We have our next Wellness Matters event, which is going to be on peptides. If you don't know anything about peptides, I implore you to sign up and tune in. In the email that I send out to all of you tomorrow, I'm going to have the link to the recording of this event in case there's any part that you want to rewatch or if you missed any bit of it. And for the people who weren't able to join us. And then I'm actually also going to include that book that Joan mentioned, The Obesity Code by Jason Fung. I'm going to put that in there just in case. I know a lot of you like to do your own reading and research, so you can do that. And hope to see you at the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to everyone for participating at the end here. That was a great conversation that we just got to take part in. So thank you so much. And let's all say thank you to Joan, because that was a great presentation.
You're very
Yes,
kind.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And just a reminder, the next Wellness Matters, because someone just put it in the chat, the next Wellness Matters is in office. It's in person in our office. So you can come, you can chat with Joan, you can talk with Dr. Carazella and Patrick, you can be in our facility. We're very excited. And we really hope to see you there. So thank you so much, and everyone have a great evening.
And a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.